Hello and welcome to the Wellbeing Wanderer Podcast. I'm your host, Kat Burdett, wellbeing coach, eternal nomad, and self-love enthusiast. Come join me on a journey as I deep dive into what it really takes to achieve that happy, content state of being. The goal of this show is to bring you those feel-good vibes, expand your learning, and encourage your own personal growth so that you can discover what well-being means for you. I'll be exploring every and any genre, including health, mindset, spirituality, and much more. So get ready for a juicy, mind-opening, raw, and real experience where no topic is off limits. I hope this helps you to feel good. Hello, and welcome back to the Wellbeing Wanderer Podcast. If this is your first time here, I just want to wish you a big, warm welcome and thank you for choosing to spend your time here with me today. I do hope the show brings you great value and you get that at least one step closer to feeling happy and healthy. If you have been listening for a while, or perhaps you've heard a few episodes now and are really enjoying the show, then it would mean the absolute world to me if you could simply hit that subscribe button and share it with just one friend. And I also want to thank you for being a part of the Wellbeing Wanderer family. From my team and from me, thank you. Now, on to today's episode. Have you ever been to the doctor and felt like you've not really been heard, or perhaps the medication that you've been prescribed isn't resolving your health issues and you just aren't getting any better? You are not alone. Enter the world of functional wellness, where practitioners help you get to the root cause of your health issues and understand what your symptoms are the result of, and look at the body as a whole as opposed to only one specific area. So you may not be aware, but aside from being a wellbeing life coach, I am currently in training to become a functional wellness practitioner myself, because I've experienced the healing benefits of a more functional, holistic approach and was able to heal my own body by focusing on bringing balance and regulation through nutrition and lifestyle. Which brings me onto today's guest, hormone expert Claire Snowdon-Darling. Claire is a pioneering thought leader in women's health, clinical director of Hormone Wellness, which is an online clinic offering functional testing and hormone balancing. She's the head of the internationally accredited College of Functional Wellness and the author of her book, Improving the Menopause Experience Through Nutrition and Lifestyle. In this fun, informative, and educational conversation, we address some of the most important health issues surrounding what we eat and how the majority of the food that we're consuming and that is actually available to us is leading to all sorts of health issues like anxiety, depression, gut issues like IBS, autoimmune diseases, and cancer. We discuss the damage that modern farming, food modification, and processed food causes us. We dive into all things hormones, what they do, and how stress and modern lifestyle and synthetic hormones dysregulate them, taking us out of balance and further away from feeling healthy. Claire has helped literally thousands of women heal and transform their lives and is incredibly passionate about calling out the failings in the current approach to women's healthcare, educating women to be able to take control of their own health. I absolutely loved our conversation, and I know that it's going to help you massively and bring you so much value. So without further ado, here is the inspirational and fabulous Claire Snowdon-Darling. Hello, Claire, and welcome to the Wellbeing Wanderer Podcast. Thank you so much for being here. It's my absolute pleasure to have you on today.
Thank you for inviting me, Kat. It's lovely to be here.
Yay, so happy. I'm absolutely delighted to have you on because I've been really wanting to get a hormone expert like yourself on the show for some time, because understanding our hormones is so fundamental to our well-being, as you know, and we're going to dive into all that. But before we do dive in, there's a very important question that I would like to ask you, and that is, what does well-being mean to you?
Such a great question. I feel very strongly that in this day and age, well-being, we have moved so far beyond green juice and yoga. It's now the whole wellness industry is so saturated that for me, well-being has actually become more about being educated about what is going on in our bodies so that we can make more clear, informed choice about what we put in our mouths, about what guru we follow, if that's what you want to be doing, what exercise we do. It's not, we've got to be careful not to just do a load of HIIT all the time. It's like the more we can educate ourselves in this information age, the more we can find what is right for us and for our bodies and our time of life. And so these days, I truly believe that well-being is around this place of education, empowerment, and then learning to really tune into what your body needs.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for that answer. And I completely agree. It's very much about finding what's right for you as an individual. And the way to do that is to look inwards at yourself and to get to know yourself a little bit more, and then figure it out from there, and what works for you and what doesn't work for you, whilst combining all the other stuff that's good for you.
Exactly.
Amazing. So, oftentimes, one of the reasons that we become so driven and passionate and dedicated to a mission is because we've personally experienced it ourselves. So, Claire, I'm really curious to know, like, what is your mission and what makes you so passionate about it?
Another great question, Kat. My absolute mission is to highlight how barbaric the processes around women's health are today, and to change it, to call it out and to change it. So I don't know if that'll happen in my lifetime, but if I can do a bit and pass on the baton, then I feel like I'll have at least created a bit of a legacy of change. What led me to that was basically a horrific experience with my health, which started in 2004. I nearly died giving birth to my daughter. We both nearly died. I remember coming out of surgery and just being so exhausted. I couldn't even hold my baby. And I thought that would go away if I had a couple of nights of good sleep. And they kept me in the hospital, and they were like, we're going to take the baby away so you can sleep because you need to recover. I never recovered. I mean, never recovered. This persistent tiredness was there just constantly. And then it turned into postpartum psychosis, postnatal depression. I struggled to bond with my daughter. It was just the whole of that early stage of parenting was so hard. And I was, at the same time trying to deal with my mental health situation, counseling and all those kind of things. And I was desperately trying to figure out why I was so tired. And I got into nutrition because I just thought if I could just eat more cleanly, exercise, maybe that will do it. But it was years of trying to find what was causing this. I didn't know it as chronic fatigue then, but later chronic fatigue syndrome. And having repeated blood tests at the doctors, being constantly told there was nothing wrong with me, going through so much work around my trauma, where I realized that had it not been for the alternative health environment, I wouldn't have found out any answers at all. And I had started, like I said, to get interested in nutrition. I started to retrain. But the truth is, I also was dramatically let down by the complementary health and the alternative health model as well, because I was doing everything I'd been trained to do. And it was a little bit green juice and yoga. And I was kind of throwing everything at it, and nothing was working. And in fact, in many ways, I was getting worse. And by the time I had quite a lot of education and I understood about gut and adrenal fatigue, I remember going to see a doctor, and I started talking about the type of testing that I would really, could you just give me this test? And he said, why do you want me to check your adrenals? Chronic fatigue has nothing to do with the adrenals. You must be an idiot if you think so. And I was like, I just looked at him and said, do you call all your patients idiots? And he went, no, but most of them aren't as stupid as you. And I just thought, I am just literally a woman who is struggling so much, desperately looking for answers. And so to have had this level of abuse, I can literally, the stuff that I see on an everyday basis, the gaslighting, the normalizing, the dismissing, just all of it. And I kind of thought it was just me, just my luck. But when I finally got a diagnosis in only in 2016, so by that point my daughter was 12. We had started to bond by that point. We have a beautiful relationship now. She's 21. We're literally like best friends. But it took a lot of work. But I found that when I finally got my diagnosis, which just took so much hammering on the door of the GPs. No, I don't need to see a gynecologist. This isn't a gynae issue. I have to see an endocrinologist. And it was only because I had private healthcare that they let me see an endocrinologist, because the NHS wouldn't touch me. And I went in and just said, you have to listen to me. And they performed, I think I had 27 vials of blood taken when they finally decided to listen to me. And they came back and said, you have a condition called premature ovarian insufficiency. Back then it was called primary ovarian failure, which just sounds awful. It's basically early menopause. Take HRT and go away. And I was given no support, no education around this condition. I then I'm still waiting to go through my menopause, and we're 9 years in, so I'm still technically perimenopausal. I've worked out I've been perimenopausal for 25 years of my life, so that's quite a lot. Absolutely no support, and the second that you're given a diagnosis of a menopause-like condition, you can't claim for the private healthcare on your insurance. There is no more support. It's like you are in the wilderness, and it's done. So what I started to realize, I then had the shame of feeling, oh my God, I'm menopausal at 36. I left my ex-husband about a year and a half later, trying to navigate the world of midlife dating. At which point do you talk about menopause and this condition? When are you withholding? And I suddenly realized, if me, with all of my experience as a therapist, as by that point I've been in clinical therapy, clinical situation for over 12 years, me with all of this shame, me with this lack of information from the doctors, from being bamboozled by doctors, me with this level of education, how must it be like for women who don't have this level of education? And so I decided to put my head above the parapet and say that I was specializing in menopause. And it was like I'd had a successful clinic for 10 years, but it just ramped up to a whole other level. And I suddenly realized how common my story is, that women are being dismissed. They're being, literally, you're not in pain. They're being denied. They're being gaslit. And even when they're taken seriously, the current medical approach to hormonal imbalances, not just menopause, but all hormone imbalances, is so outdated and so fundamentally wrong. I remember thinking, someone has to do something about this. And then this voice in the back of my head said, it's you. You're the one that has to do something about it. There isn't anyone else who's got this level of experience, this level of knowledge, and this level of personal experience. You've got to go out there and fight the fight. So I spoke to my business partner, Laura. She has gone on her own journey with, ultimately, we now know is hormones. She went through the autoimmune issues. And we just decided to sort of niche down incredibly. And then from that moment, everything has, we've written the book. We have just gone out there. We are making as many waves as we can, because I've been doing this for quite a long time now. And I speak to women on a daily basis. And there's probably not a week that goes by where someone's story doesn't still move me to tears, because I am so shocked that we are living in the dark ages when it comes to women's health.
Oh my goodness, Claire, thank you for sharing all that. And also, what a journey that you've had. It's obviously horrible to hear what you went through, and also very concerning that you hear so many other women still going through similar journeys. It sounds like that nothing is changing. Nothing is changing here. But it also seems like everything that you went through was almost like preparing you to take on this role of the head of the College of Functional Wellness and everything else that you do. And it really gave you that deeper understanding. And something I found in my life is that we do tend to go through very challenging times in order to kind of shape us up for our future and prepare us. And sometimes they're awful, but I bet you don't have, can I say that you don't have any regrets, or is that too bold?
Absolutely none whatsoever. In fact, I look back with so much gratitude to the darkest, deepest traumas of my life, because they absolutely, like you say, they were carving me into being this person where I'm under no illusion that I'm going to change the world, but just being able to raise awareness that it needs changing is more than, you know, what was happening to the world I came into.
Yeah, I think you're doing an amazing job. And for those people listening who know me, I'm currently doing Claire's course, training to be a functional wellness practitioner. So, which is why it's such a huge honor to have Claire on the show today. And yeah, I can see like your depth of knowledge, like doing the course. There's so much attention to detail. There's so much passion there. The way you and Laura deliver it is fabulous. So if anybody's thinking about moving into the field of wellness and functional wellness, then do go and check out Claire and Laura's course, because it's absolutely incredible. So I just wanted to give you a little plug there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Of course, you're welcome. So something that you guys offer is this whole health approach. So, which is really important, but I'd love for you to break down what this actually means, encompasses, and perhaps highlight the areas that you found your clients to struggle with in particular.
Okay. So let me explain why we do that. When I look back at my birth trauma, it sort of looked like it came out of the blue. Yeah, I had it was a really quite a terrible labor, but I was what I thought was a relatively healthy 27-year-old. Like, why did I end up with all of that stuff? What I find so fascinating is I run an online clinic, and so I still work with clients, and I get someone's health history, and when they're coming to me with their hormone issue, or their fertility issue, or their menopause problem, and I look at their health history and I can absolutely see red flags the whole way through it. They've had migraines, they've had IBS, I see their diet, I see maybe they had quite a traumatic childhood, or they've, some major illnesses or something. This stuff doesn't come out the blue. So I had a trigger event, which was my birth trauma. Other people have a trigger event, which could be the flu. It can be, anything at all. I like to talk about, we have the ingredients that go into our cake that we're baking. And so we put all the ingredients in throughout our lifetime. And then we have a situation where heat and pressure is applied. And that's usually a trigger event. And in that moment, the cake that comes out is just a sum of the parts that have all been leading up to it. So what we do with the whole health approach is we can't just look at hormone problems. Let's say you can't just look at PCOS, or you can't just look at menopause, because women think, if I take this hormone, if I take the HRT, if I take the contraceptive pill, everything's going to be fixed. We have to understand why we have those issues in the first place. And so that means looking at the whole health. So we break that down into sort of 5 main pillars. So blood sugar imbalances, stress hormone imbalances. Everyone's too stressed living in 2025. The sex hormones themselves being imbalanced, it's very, very common in women. And there is an epidemic of young women today having an imbalance of these hormones. And then the bit that no one really talks about as part of health issues is we have to look at what's going on in the gut. And this is so revolutionary, really, because we only discovered the gut microbiome in 2012. So this is still very, relatively new information, which is why the doctors don't really focus on it. And then we have to talk about the immune system, what it's doing. And so really, when we look through the lens of all of these different channels at someone who's presenting with a health history or a health issue, then that's why we can see the red flags. And that's why we go, it's not as simple as sticking you on HRT or giving you the contraceptive pill. There is a whole load of other stuff that needs to be looked at. I've forgotten your last part of your question, so you might have to repeat that bit.
Oh, sure. It was, perhaps you could highlight the areas that you have found that your clients tend to struggle with in particular.
So I think the bits that clients tend to struggle with in particular, honestly, it's the fact that it can take time, because what we are looking at is a health history that often usually kicks off around puberty. That's when people start to notice that something isn't right, but their symptoms are normalized. And that's what I mean by, we're talking about the IBS, the migraines, the weight gain, there's just these little things that we just normalize as part of a normal human experience, but they shouldn't be. And so I think where people really struggle is we're sort of programmed to believe that this medication or this surgery is the answer. We're not programmed to realize that we have to unwind the damage caused by our history. So I think that's where people struggle the most. I also have huge compassion for it, having been there myself, because it also takes a massive amount of emotional resilience and the fear that people have, that they go, I'm not getting better, I've made all these changes, I'm not getting better, I'm having a relapse, or I've gone back to the beginning. And you go, you can't have gone back to the beginning because your circumstances aren't the same. And so being able to just acknowledge that this is data, my body's trying to tell me something, there's another level I've got to look at. That's, I think, where people struggle, because they just want it now. But it's going to take time if you've been struggling with this thing and not known for 30 years.
Yeah. I'm sure that can be very daunting. And I think what's quite remarkable is that a lot of these chronic health conditions that we end up with, they take about 4 to 5 years to actually develop, and sometimes longer, sometimes longer.
Minimal, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think we realize like the little bits of damage that we're doing to our body over time. And so people do tend to be like, oh, I've got this problem. Like, where did it come from? It's come out the blue, but it's not actually come out the blue. And as you know, you trace back the health history and then it all makes sense to you. So I think it is so important to create that awareness around food. And I want to ask you a question about wheat in a minute, but because I struggle with that one myself with some of my clients. But what I wanted to just comment on was that, what you're talking about there is something that seems like so obvious to me, like that holistic approach that you take, because every part of your body is connected, and I always go on about this in my show, it's mind, body, soul, but especially in the body itself, you have everything affecting one another. And so it's like to go to the doctor and just expect that, you fix one area and it's all going to be okay, to me seems absolute madness. And when I connected those dots and completely changed my lifestyle, which is something that I teach in my courses and things, then wow, I mean, what a difference it makes. And you are taking that, like you say, it's that whole health approach. And for those people listening, why I'm doing the nutrition part of it is because that is such a fundamental part of it. And Claire's, obviously this is what you do for your living. So yeah, and what you're so passionate about is so in depth. So yeah, I just wanted to pick up on that to just reiterate that point that, everything is connected and one thing will affect the other. And this is why this functional wellness route is so important to find the actual root cause of what's going on.
I think that's the bit that I love the most about the work that Laura and I do. It's the fact that everything, the interconnectedness, because, same, I when I trained as a complementary therapist, mind, body, spirit. And then I was like, but there's something so esoteric about that. It never felt tangible to me. And so when I can actually explain to someone, and we'll cover it in week, but when I can actually explain to someone, when you put food into your mouth, This is going to have a knock-on effect with whether or not you're anxious, whether or not you're depressed, and to the fundamental levels. And when you can start to explain it from 5 different areas, when you can start saying, because your vagus nerve does this, because your progesterone does this, because this hormone does this, because it's like, oh my goodness, that it's so exciting bringing those strands together and seeing people as they have those aha moments and go, okay, now I get it. This isn't flaky hippie stuff. This is real science about how the body really works and how we have become so removed from how we were evolved to be.
That's so juicy. Thank you so much for sharing that. I really, really was hoping you would say something like that so people can hear coming from the expert yourself. So, now, the reason I want to talk about wheat is because this is the thing I find that people fight me on the most. And obviously, having learned what I've learned from you and learning that it's a processed food, and then I'm trying to explain this to my colleagues, and they're like, oh, why don't you eat bread? You know, or you've got to enjoy yourself, you know, life's too short, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, but so can you please explain to everyone what is the problem with wheat and eating?
What's up with wheat? What's up with wheat?
What's up with wheat? I was trying not to use that, but yeah.
What's up with wheat? Okay, I mean, we might need a whole lot of podcasts for this, but I'll give it to you in as short a sentence as possible. It won't be a sentence, it'll be a paragraph. So, before 1969, wheat was actually pretty okay. It had nutrients in it. It was pretty okay. It was also there wasn't a high yield from a crop, because when you think about it, it was very, very tall, and so it was very, very easy to knock over, and it was also they would get blight and pests and all those kind of things. So wheat was expensive, and therefore we didn't have so much exposure to it. 1969 happened, and a man called Norman Borlaug came along, and he hybrid the grain, and the grain went from being super tall that used to be able to hide a man stood up in a wheat field, to now this very, very dwarf grain that's this uniform height, which is very handy for combine harvesters. But the gluten content went from something like 8% to 85%. Gluten in Latin means glue. It literally glues itself into our bowel, into our joints, into our neural pathway. And when it glues itself into our bowel, for example, wherever it glues itself to, it causes inflammation. And so inflammation is absolutely the cause of symptoms and illness. And then, if that wasn't bad enough, in 1983, we started spraying it with a pesticide called glyphosate, which is also known as Monsanto Roundup, which is an antimicrobial, which all sounds okay when you're trying to stop your wheat getting blight. But actually, when we think antimicrobial, but my gut microbiome and my mouth microbiome is all made of microbes that are supposed to be there, that are supposed to be working on our benefit. This is not discerning, this glyphosate. It destroys all microbes it gets in contact with. So what's happening is like we're having almost like a dose of antibiotics every single time we eat wheat. So our immune system's getting shredded, our gut's getting shredded. And it wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't in everything. But wheat used to be so expensive that it was a real treat to have it, whereas now people's diets are so full of it because it's a very, very cheap commodity. So we have a high dose and we have a high exposure to a food that was never part of our food chain and actually has no place in our food chain. And I truly, truly, truly believe, having seen now thousands of people give up wheat, I have absolutely seen how giving up wheat revolutionizes health.
Yeah, and I completely have my own experience of that. Is as soon as I stopped eating wheat, all my IBS symptoms went away. Yeah,
exactly right. And so when people say, well, you've got to enjoy yourself, I remember when I first did my training back in 2007, and I was like, okay, well, I won't have any wheat then, and I'll just have a treat bit of wheat. And then very quickly after I ate it, 20 minutes after I ate it, there'd be the reflux, there'd be the bloating. I would just feel awful. And I was like, this is no longer a treat. Like, I need to reframe what I consider a treat, because this ain't it. Like, there's just no way. And my experience is the more people give up wheat, they kind of say to begin with, oh, I really want that thing. But then actually when they have that thing, they feel so awful. They go, am done. I'm just done.
Yeah, that was part of my journey too. And you know, I might have it like very occasionally. I actually went to Italy recently and I thought, you know what, I'm going to experiment and I am just going to try eating the croissants, eating the pastries, the bread, the pasta. I was in so much pain all week. You can't tell that from my pictures I took, but I was in so much pain all week. It was absolutely awful. And it just, you know, hammered the point home to me. So I kind of did it as a little test. But obviously, I knew full well that it was going to have that effect. But I also ate sugar and I also ate dairy.
Sounds
Which
like a great holiday.
it was brilliant. I was like, this is my final hurrah. Goodbye to these foods. So yeah, and the reason I don't usually eat those is they're the main allergens, which Claire could also tell you about, but that's a whole other conversation as well.
So the other thing I just want to pick up on there, the reason, so having said earlier about the interconnectedness of everything, because that's like the basic story of what the problem is with wheat. But then when we start to dive into it, you realize that every single time I put something into my mouth that my body is going to have a reaction to, that it has to do work around, there is a signal sent through our vagus nerve into, which is part of a huge part of our nervous system, which tells the body whether or not we are in danger. And it sends it to our gut and it says danger's coming. If we actually have digested something and the body is still processing it, the gut will also send this message back to the vagus nerve to tell the nervous system that we're under threat, we're under threat, we're under threat. So this is so important when you think about how many people are on anti-anxiety medications, how many people are in a state of depression, because their nervous systems are literally on high alert. And then it goes a step further that when we are in this stress response, the body cannot make the female hormone progesterone. And progesterone is our calming hormone. And it's the hormone that's anti-inflammatory. And it's the hormone that stabilizes our mood and our weight and all of that, and our periods and all of those lovely things. And so if we're constantly in a place where we're eating this food, our hormones are all over the place. Our gut is all over the place. We're in an inflammatory response, and the body is on high alert and in danger and feels it's in danger. It just becomes, there's so much in so many different ways to look at it, where you just come down to no good is going to come from eating the wheat. And the thing is, we are addicted to it because it actually spikes adrenaline. So we think we have this feel good response, but it's actually a stress response. And so then the conditioning as well. These are soft foods, especially if it's cakey and it's sweet. It's a treat. It's a reward. But actually, the whole of modern living is we are so deeply in comfort that it's messing up our health.
Yeah, and I think the problem is that it's just too convenient for us as well, because it's literally everywhere and we live in this convenience culture. And a phrase that I I haven't coined myself, but I always say, like, convenience kills you, basically, because taking those shortcuts really, really damages your health in so many different areas and aspects of life as well. And so it does sound like quite a tall feat to give up wheat. I didn't mean to make that rhyme, but I think, from what you're saying, it is something that is so essential for our health and well-being.
Yeah, I completely believe that to be true. Norman Borlaug won the Nobel Prize for having saved 1 million lives because suddenly wheat grain was, so available. And I truly believe that he's actually damaged 7 billion.
Yeah, yeah. It's amazing when you think you're doing something good and then, yeah, I guess he didn't know what he was doing at the time.
No. And we have so much evidence that shows that from I find it fascinating. The clients that I've got in my clinic who were pre-1969, their health issues are minimal compared to the people who were post-1969. It's fascinating.
Wow. I mean, that says it all, really, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, you also segued quite nicely onto my next question, which was about your favorite topic, progesterone. So you've already explained that it's the calming hormone, but I'd love you to educate everybody listening on a bit more about what it does, what it is, why it's so important, and why it's also so commonly overlooked as well. I think you touched on a few of those points.
Yeah. So progesterone is one of our three in the female hormones, one of the three. So we have estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone. Estrogen, everyone knows about estrogen because it's the first hormone that was discovered in women. And it was very much categorized as women have estrogen, men have testosterone. And then they discovered that women have testosterone and they went, oh. And then after that, they discovered this other hormone that they called progesterone because the belief was that progesterone stands for progestation hormone. And so the belief was that it's sort of thickening the womb lining so that it can hold a baby. That's the only job of progesterone, but it's not the only job. Progesterone has lots and lots and lots of jobs that are entirely overlooked. So the medical model does not test for progesterone. The medical model, if you go as a woman with a hormone imbalance, you are unlikely to have your progesterone checked because they are thinking, unless it's for fertility, well, we don't need to test your progesterone. But like I was saying, progesterone is your calming hormone. It's an anti-inflammatory. And when you think about how many women have got autoimmune conditions, things like IBS, this is a really important piece of the puzzle. Things like endometriosis. It's like we have to understand that this anti-inflammatory hormone is essential. So it becomes really interesting because the body will decide, there's a stress response, that if the body is under any kind of stress or in danger, it will choose not to make progesterone and it will make the stress hormone cortisol. So we have this issue where just living in 2025 is very, very stressful for women because of the gadgets, the gizmos, the pesticides, the pollution, the food, the general stress, all of it. Our bodies are constantly choosing to make cortisol instead of progesterone. And so what's happening is we haven't got the anti-inflammatory, we haven't got the ability to relax and calm down. The issue then gets even further more of a problem because if we do go to the doctor and we've got anything like a period problem or any kind of hormone problem, the first port of call, not menopausal, the first port of call will be to put you on the contraceptive pill, just high levels of estrogen. And you think that you're getting a progesterone, but you're not. You're getting a synthetic progesterone, which experts like me call progestins. Progestins do not look, resemble, or act like progesterone at all. They look like testosterone. They act like testosterone. They resemble in the body testosterone. And so what happens in the body is testosterone is a ramp you up hormone. It's the hormone that's going to get you going and put you into the switched on nervous system response. Progesterone does the opposite of that. So we've already got estrogen and testosterone, and then you're piling in more estrogen in the contraceptive pill and this fake progesterone that actually is just going to make us absolutely wired, inflamed, put on weight, make our moods go crazy, like all of these things. And then you go to the doctor, complain about it, and you'll be put on antidepressants. You'll be, given all these other medications, as opposed to look at the fundamental reason that you are in this place. Exactly the same when you come into HRT, the synthetic progesterones, or there's a body identical progesterone. There is no body identical progesterone when it comes to other hormone issues other than menopause. So this is kind of part of the problem. And so it's so overlooked because the medical model just don't rate it. I also have a little theory as well, because the medical model now is so governed by big pharma. It wasn't, back when I was a little baby, it wasn't. It is so run by big pharma now. So if we know that giving a woman synthetic hormones is going to put up her blood pressure, it's going to ramp up her cholesterol, it's going to cause her anxiety, then there's 3 other medications I could get this woman on. So why am I going to want to take this synthetic progesterone out and give her a progesterone that's going to do the complete opposite when I could actually get her more ingrained into different medications? That's just my little theory. But this is the problem that we're seeing. So the medical model are not trained on progesterone. They don't look at it in the same way. They're actually dealing with very outdated data around progesterone. And it is taking experts like me basically all gathering together to scream about this issue, because every single time I see a woman who's had a hysterectomy at the age of 36 because she had fibroids, I know that's because she didn't have enough progesterone. So it sounds like she had too much estrogen. The estrogen was probably fine. She just didn't have enough progesterone. She was under too much stress. or she had so many big surgeries with endometriosis because we're not looking at natural progesterone. This is where I get really angry, because this overlooking of progesterone means that women are being harmed on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's absolutely massive. And I think I was on the pill for about 23 years. And I can't be 100% certain, but I'm pretty sure I developed PCOS as a result of it. I don't know if that's something you've come across. Yeah.
When you came off of it, or when you were on it?
When I was on it. When I was on it, I developed it. And then I came off it and did pretty much the kind of the protein, fats, carbs diet, ate very naturally, changed my lifestyle. And within a year, I got retested again and it had completely gone. So I kind of balanced myself out through lifestyle choices.
Amazing.
So yeah, which was cool. It was like a complete like fluke that just happened to be what I'm learning now. But so yeah, but it's a real serious problem. And there does seem to be this estrogen dominance that I've heard a lot about. And I guess that is that counteracting the progesterone as well, would you say?
So I just want to talk to that for a moment, because there is estrogen dominance, but there's also progesterone deficiency. And so it's like, so the way I can describe it is, when you've gone through puberty, you have your progesterone, you have your estrogen. We always have a little bit more estrogen to progesterone, but that's normal. But then if you are under loads of stress and you stop making some progesterone, why are we calling this estrogen dominance when actually it's progesterone deficiency? So so progesterone is so overlooked that even its own condition we're naming as estrogen. So people then go crazy trying to get rid of their estrogen dominance, when actually what we're looking at often is progesterone deficiency. But there is true estrogen dominance, and true estrogen dominance is, I always like to talk about, there's the progesterone, there's the estrogen that we are making where we should be making it in our adrenal glands and our ovaries. And then there's estrogen that is coming from external sources, like we're drinking water out of a plastic bottle, we are exposed to a lot of processed foods, we are putting a lot of toxic chemicals on our skin. And what happens in this case is there are chemicals in these things called xenoestrogens. They're fake estrogens. And what happens is, when we ingest them, or when our body has to process them, we have to process them through our gut, and our body often can't process them. So what happens is these estrogens just recirculate, and they're really toxic estrogens, and they can often cause the mood instability, the weight gain. That's true estrogen dominance. That's actually really easy to fix, but we also have to look for the progesterone deficiency.
That's really, really interesting. And I know that when you're perimenopausal and menopausal, that your progesterone drops right off the scales. Yeah. So I guess that's another obstacle to overcome for women.
Yeah, and that really is an obstacle, because unbeknownst to most women, actually what happens, like I sort of said, we have our progesterone and estrogen, they're tracking along quite happily, and then progesterone literally falls off a cliff in perimenopause, but estrogen carries on. So at the point that progesterone starts to drop off, statistically and on average, women start that process at the age of 36. They might not start becoming perimenopausal until their mid-40s, but they're going to start having this is where autoimmune symptoms start to creep up. This is where women start to notice, mood issues, more digestive issues. And no one's talking about progesterone. No one's looking at it. That's when it's really easy to start putting you on different medications. Migraines are a big one. Insulin resistance is a big one. This is where diabetes starts to come in. The weight gain starts coming, insomnia. So what happens then, if you do go to a doctor and you're over 40, they can put you on HRT. But this is where it's really difficult, because what a doctor considers a menopausal woman is a woman who's not had bleeds for 12 months. That could be in your mid-50s. not even your mid 40s, that could be your mid 50s. And the HRT they give you will be appropriate for a woman who is in her mid 50s. And what's happened then is her estrogen has also disappeared. But what's commonly happening is you're taking a woman who has got just a drop off of progesterone, but all the normal estrogen, and you're putting her on HRT as if she's got no estrogen, high doses, right at the beginning of her perimenopause, which makes her feel 10 times worse. And then they're often told you're not absorbing your estrogen without testing, I might add. And then they just get put up and up and up because no one's talking about progesterone and looking at this as an issue in its own right, and that we should be giving perimenopausal women progesterone only HRT.
Wow. Well, there you go, everyone. Yeah, that's put pay to that. Yeah, it's interesting actually as well, because when I hear you talk about that progesterone dropping off, I'm 42, but there are some of those symptoms there, like that have started for me all of a sudden, literally in the past, probably like since I started this course, to be honest with you, last year. And it's so interesting. I was like, oh, what timing is that? But yeah, I've been getting like irritable, and energy levels have dropped as well. What else? I've come up with like weird like skin like spots on my hand, which is like, I know, autoimmune. And so suddenly, exactly what you were saying there, all of that's been triggered. And so that makes me think, oh, that must be that drop in progesterone that you're talking about there.
But you could quite easily be going to the doctor, be given steroid cream, be given all these other things, whereas actually what would be really useful is to test your progesterone and be given progesterone as a standalone. But that's not how the medical model is working right now.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that and highlighting that to everyone listening, because that is really, really important. So I'm curious to know, Claire, what are your daily health and well-being non-negotiables?
Oh, all of them. So moving my body is an absolute essential. What that can look like a variety of different things. It can be workout with weights. It could be getting on my bike or my static bike. I can be walking with a weight vest. There can just be a variety of different bits, but movement is an absolute essential. I eat a huge amount of protein, and that is an absolute non-negotiable for everyone. And so if you want to know what a huge amount of protein looks like, if you take your weight in kilograms, so if you were 65 kilograms, then you literally now convert into grams and add a zero. So you should be eating 650 grams of meat in a day, or protein in a day. And so what I call protein is meat, fish, and eggs, tofu, but we don't get enough protein from tofu, but meat, fish, and eggs. So when you start thinking that, if you think about a packet of mince from a supermarket, that's usually half a kilo. It's usually 500 grams. So it's that and a bit. That's how much we should be having in a day of our protein. So I have huge amounts of protein. What else do I do? 2.5 liters of water. I take my supplements. They're all non-negotiables. And I also have periods of, no matter how busy I am, stopping, walking around the room, not allowing myself to get so absorbed and sucked into work that I find I've been sat, sort of stuck. They're kind of the things, because I've moved to this amazing location. So I have a very, very calm and peaceful life now. But yeah, those are the essentials for me.
Oh, they all sound amazing. And yes, some of them I do myself. And yeah, they definitely sound like quite achievable ones for anybody listening that wanted to try them.
Yeah,
So nice.
I think so. And cuddling my dog, that's a definite non-negotiable.
Dogs are so important, little angels. And I'm curious to know, what are your absolute no-nos, like the things that you wouldn't even entertain the thought of doing?
I would never eat wheat. It just doesn't even feature. I go to a restaurant and I see it on a menu. I don't even notice it. It's just not there. I don't use any toxic chemicals on my skin, in my house. at all. So no toxic chemicals whatsoever. I'm really, really opposed to them. And I just refuse to let myself get stressed because it's not worth the nervous system fallout. So if there is something where there's a trigger or some work stress or something that happens, then I throw every single tool at it. Like I am in a child parenting, I'm going for a walk, I am doing the deep breathing because my nervous system health is so fundamental. So there is no way that's getting disturbed.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And I understand that everyone is bio individual. So, we're also beautifully complex. We're also different. But would you be able to offer some basic tips to everyone on how to feel healthier that could benefit everybody?
Yes. So eat more protein and drink more water. Absolutely, categorically. We are saturated with carbs in this modern life, and people have got such conditioning that they need carbs, especially if you're doing any kind of sports training. People just believe I need the carbs, I need the carbs. We actually don't. There is a whole process in the body where we don't need the serious amount of carbs that we're having. And so much of our carb related food is processed. Even when we start looking at fruit, I remember being a child and eating strawberries, and they were properly tart and sour, and you would be adding sugar to them. These days we don't have to add the sugar because that's been added in. So the food that we are eating is not representative of the food that was in the wild. So being really careful with carbs, going heavy on your proteins and the good fats is absolutely essential. Drinking the 2 liters of water, finding a way to move your body that you enjoy. They're really important. My personal tips for general health, and always check with your doctor or your healthcare practitioner, but my favorite supplements across the board, particularly for women, are a good magnesium, a good adaptogenic herb. So that would be something like a schisandra, ashwagandha, ginseng. And if you're perimenopausal, then actually an estrogen detoxer can be really helpful. So they're kind of the essentials.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for offering that to everybody. I'm going to write all And my last question for you, Claire, is if you could design your own supermarket and you could fill it with absolutely anything you wanted, what food and other items would you put in it? I thought you'd like this one.
I love that one. Laura and I often say, when we're retired, shall we open a supermarket or a restaurant and just be able to go and have all the things that we love? There would be no processed food, so nothing in a packet. There would only be fresh seasonal vegetables. And I would love to find a way of getting the seeds for traditional things like strawberries. And again, only having them seasonally. Why can we buy blueberries on Christmas Day? It makes no sense. It's just not okay. Fresh, organic, grass-fed meat, and chicken and pork that has not been fed corn and soy, because that, again, we have just ruined our food chain there. And lovely organic toiletries. A bit of bubbly water, I'm all right with that if it's come in a can.
Sounds amazing. And they'd all be at much less of the price than they are now, hopefully, too.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, Claire, you've been an amazing guest. You are a font of all things hormonal and font of knowledge for everything hormonal, and also so much more. There's so much that you know and so much that you have to share. And I wish you the very best on your mission to educate women on their health and change the current approach to our healthcare. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Kat. It's been lovely.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.